This is, if you guys are in the wrong session, EXL 309, an Office 365 migration case study. So Office 365, you're like, that hasn't launched yet, right? True. Office 365 hasn't launched yet, is launching very, very soon. Some of you, I hope all of you, are on the beta, if you're not already a part of the program. Sorry, a little bit of feedback there. So in Office 365, we will have Exchange Online. I'm here to talk about the Exchange Online portion. For the past 3 years, we've actually been running as a service, even before it's released to everyone else, as a program, part of a program called the Live EDU program. This used to be called Exchange Labs. So even before Exchange 2010 RTM'd, we had people running on the service because we built Exchange 2010 from the ground up, both as a server product and as a service.
Down here, Ann.
Oh, I am.
Ann.
Yep.
Aim down here.
Aim down here. Oh.
Dead behind me.
Gotcha. I'm learning something new every day. I am thrilled to introduce you to a couple of gentlemen. First one is John Logan. He's doing most of the hard work today. John, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
My name is John Logan. I work for the Kentucky Department of Education in the technology office. I've been there in that office for 21 years, so I've been doing this a while. My focus is directory services and messaging, and I do architecture and engineering. So.
Thanks, John. And then I'm going to introduce one of our partners, Danny Kim. Danny, quick intro.
Sure. Danny Kim, CTO, founder of Full Armor Corporation. We're one of the partners that actually helped with the migration on this case study.
So this is what we're going to be covering this afternoon. Quick intros, that's what we're doing right now. As part of the introduction, John's going to go over some of the scenarios and challenges of where Kentucky Department of Education was at before they decided to move to the cloud. They're going to talk about their email situation, some of the challenges and requirements they had. Before, they're going to talk about migration planning. So migration planning is probably what some of you who hope to go to the cloud are looking at doing or in the process of. So hopefully you'll be able to learn some stuff from what John's team actually did. And then the migration itself. How were we able to migrate mailboxes to the cloud? Quick caveat, this was done a year ago, almost to the day. I think this weekend will represent the weekend where they migrated hundreds of thousands of mailboxes to the cloud. Now, since then, we've released different tools. Our partners are able to provide different tools to move customers who are on Exchange or other on-premises server software to the cloud. So some of the technologies and scenarios are going to be different than what is available today, but some of the processes, some of the overall stuff still applies. So the tool set may be slightly different, the scenarios might be slightly different, still works. Then we're going to talk about what is the world for the Kentucky Department of Education today. Post-migration, what did they learn? What would they recommend? What does Danny recommend from a partner engagement perspective and a migration planning perspective? And then finally, you guys get to ask as many questions as you like, and then like he says, we'll go get a drink. Got it? All right, so I'm going to introduce, well, not reintroduce, hand it off to John, who's going to talk about what KDE looked like before we migrated them to the cloud.
And before we get started, just to make positive, I just want to make sure that you all get what you want to get. If you notice, my email address was on a previous slide. It's john.logan@education.ky.gov if you have any questions. After the fact, we have probably probably had 15 or 20 different companies in the last year that have contacted us, and we'll have calls with them and just make sure they get what they needed. So don't hesitate at all to send me an email if you don't hear what you want. What we've got here is the Kentucky Department of Education is where I work, specifically in the office of KIDS, kind of corny, but Knowledge, Information, and Data Systems. The initiative we work on is the KETS initiative, the KETS Education Technology System, which was put in place about 20 years ago and tasked our office to deliver enterprise technologies to the schools. Just a quick list of our customers. At a high level, we've got 174 schools. You may look at that as branch offices, of your own companies. Each one of them has a CIO. The important thing to gather there is some of them are basketball coaches as well as having to be the technical experts. So not always very technical folks, which we always have to think about. And also our partners. We're really big on the difference between vendors and partners. Vendors are someone who sells you something, and gives you a number to call when something's broke. The partners are there with us all the time, before, during, and after. These two folks represent two of our big partners. So, just a simple picture of the state. It is broken up. We break it up logically into 8 regions. Each one of those regions has what we call a CETS engineer that is kind of the person, the conduit between us and those districts. Region 3, you'll see, that's Jefferson County. They're basically 100,000 students, 15,000 staff. And in Region 7 and 8, which is rural Kentucky, you'll have school districts that have 100 students in the whole school. So we very diverse, rural and urban. Just some simple numbers just to kind of lay down what we look at whenever we provide any enterprise service. 600,000 students, 100,000 staff, roughly half of those are teachers. Probably the most interesting number on here, for me anyway, is the 350,000 students qualify for free and reduced lunch, which is amazing. More than half of the kids in the state per income qualify for free and reduced lunch, which even more so makes us, when we do any initiative, to look at cheaper options. So, a little more info. We're pretty unique. I don't believe there's another state that, of course, this has gone on for 20 years, but has the every public school in the entire state, including Louisville. Other states have something similar to us, where the department delivers technologies on behalf of all schools, but most states will lose their Nashvilles or Miami-Dades or Chicagos, and they'll have their own thing. In our state, all of the public schools exist under this umbrella, so we've all got the same AD, all have the same exchange, and many other systems. So, 15,000 staffed handhelds is a pretty big deal for us as things go mobile. It's a pretty interesting slide here. I've been part of the directory services and messaging for, I guess, since they've had it, since NT 351 and Microsoft Mail back in the day, well, Novell before that. In 94 and forward to the broken line with Microsoft Mail and Exchange up to 5.5, our districts owned and operated those servers. So we had servers deployed physically in the Microsoft Mail days, 1 per school. 405.055 days, 1 per school district. And the districts actually managed the boxes. They paid for them. They fixed them if they were broke, that kind of thing. When we put in Exchange 2003 forward, there was a big transition, a big change for us in the technology office, because we ended up buying those boxes and we were the ones who maintained those boxes. It's kind of just all that this slide is trying to show. This is probably as interesting a slide to me as there is, because it shows that in 94 we had 1,250 email servers, 1 per school. And in 96, we migrated to Exchange 4.0. Of course, in 97 went 5.0 and 5.5. And I actually wore it's a little weird, but I wore a shirt today from 1996, our CETS Education Technology Conference. And I wore this shirt 15 years ago, standing in front of 200 school districts, telling them that we're going to remove their 1,250 servers and we're going to go to 200 that we're going to manage. And, here we stand 15 years later and we got 0 servers. So as of I think it's a year Saturday is when the 1-year anniversary of us getting rid of those. So we have 180 domains in one forest. As we go through these, think that a year ago we have 1 forest, 180 domains. We have 544 domain controllers. So it's a big system. And we also had roughly 200 Exchange 2003 servers, all in one org, all in one forest. So. And as we go through here, I want you all to, my hope is through these other slides that this is not just pie in the sky, here's what we did, let's high five. I really believe that I've got some things on some of these slides that are very good lessons learned, things that we encountered that'll do you well if you're looking at going something in the cloud. Just make sure that I'm not missing something here. KDE does reserve domain admins and AD. What that means is our school district staff, because a lot of them, they've got a lot of other things going on, we don't give them domain admins. We give them more OU access to things, and we reserve domain admins. So this is, if you want to look at this from an AD, some of y'all AD people, empty root would be at the top, all the subdomains would be underneath it, and that's really how we exist. I've kind of triangled them just to show the site replications, but here we have Adair alphabetically, the first district, Woodford the last. Pretend in the middle there's 170 some more school districts, and then the Department of Education where I work, and then we have root. Every domain has 3 domain controllers. 2 exist physically in the district. 1 exists in Frankfurt, which is the hub site, which is where I work. So those kind of the ones that you see in the corners that point to root, they are a member of those domains, but physically they exist in Frankfurt. So we have a 10-node cluster that has 200, roughly, domain controllers that we used, as you can imagine. We put it in place, actually, with this same project. So it was the last 18 months leading up to a year ago was pretty rough. So the circles are site design. So that's the AD site, if you're familiar with how AD replicates. And then the root, and then 1 domain controller from each domain exists in its own site. So main thing to get out of this is that it takes 15 minutes to replicate. When a school district creates a user in AD, we have to realize that could take up to 15 minutes to make it up to the hub site, which is where provisioning would take it and sync it to the cloud. Always when we do any enterprise services, just a few things that we always have to keep in mind. One is the network. In this case, it's the KETS, or the Kentucky Education Network, as we call it. It is an MPLS network, and you see the size of the pipes will go from 10 meg for small districts up to 500 for the Jefferson counties and Fayette counties, which is Lexington and Louisville. And then our pipe out to the internet is 4 gigabit. We also have our customers, our school districts. KSD and KSB are Kentucky School for the Blind, Kentucky School for the Deaf. To me, they're just school districts, but they actually exist as divisions in the department. But for our sake, they're all school districts. They all have kids, students. They're autonomous with governance, meaning that each one of them wants to act or sometimes does act as their own entity, but they all exist under one umbrella. It's really an interesting scenario when you have 174 captains of a ship all wanting to steer, and we're all trying to steer them all the same way. And then we have the department, and then support is always a consideration on building these huge systems. I mean, because these are really big systems. A lot of them are complex systems, and then we have to hand it off to a very small number of people, including the people in the district. So, just normal business requirements when I guess you deal with an educational entity that has under 13 age kids, I guess. You have state laws that want inspectability, meaning that the organization owns the data, the end user doesn't own the data. Where a lot of the cloud-based free email systems, you can go sign up for Hotmail even, and I would own that data. I'd be the one person that owned it. We needed something that we could own it. We could change the namespace to make it what we wanted, and then the individual school districts could search that data. We have existing state standards that we always have to think about. The other things in the list, pretty common. Integration is something, obviously, that's more my job to bring to the design table. End users don't care as much about it as I would. So, and then the normal the additional Web 2.0 tools, not just email, but the other things that come into it. Are we going to hold questions, or how do you want to do
Sorry,
that?
we'll take questions at the end.
Yeah, we got a ton of slides. Just want to make sure we get to them. More business requirements. Always, the business side wants cheap, good, easy, and quick. We tell them to pick 2, not pick 4 normally. But in our case, students, our school districts did not want their kids seen outside of their district's global address list. If you're not K-12 or you're not education, that may not mean a lot to you. But it is important to realize that there are some hurdles within tenant designs that could be a challenge if you have that. Most companies, I think they want, if they're going to put it in the global, everybody sees this, it's not a big deal. But in our case, right or wrong, Adair County, when they create a student, they don't want anyone outside of Adair to see that kid. And they don't want that student to see anyone else outside the district. So that right there, that one business requirement changes a lot of stuff for us. The manageability is underlined here because, as I said before, we choose to limit the districts from having things like the domain admin type privileges. So in this case, we want to give school districts the ability to manage their own users, obviously, but not manage anyone else's users. And the way we've laid AD in place, that's fine. But looking into a cloud-based offering, and depending on how you design your tenants, that can be a challenge because, with one tenant is a GAL boundary, a global address list boundary. So everybody in one tenant would see each other in the GAL, but we don't want Adair to be able to delete people in Woodford. So that challenge is something, that thing became a challenge with us as we went through the design. Why we chose cloud-based, whenever we do any project, when I was into this project, I guess, started October 2008, we lay a lot of different options on the table after we've pulled all the business requirements together. I always do an option and recommendations document, do it very formally and present it to the business side. And on that document, you can imagine we had Exchange 2007 on-prem, 300 boxes, a hybrid solution with staff on-prem, kids in the cloud. We had some districts being left behind. We were going to allow districts to make a decision if they didn't want to go to the cloud, and we had all kinds of options. And we really let the business decide it and our school districts decide. So the cloud was chosen, Microsoft in this example, in our case. It met our requirements. We had no more servers. Third one is a single choke to throat, or throat to choke, as we would say, one person to point to fix these issues. And we really want to get out of the widget turning business. I mean, again, we're K-12. We've done a lot in the last 20 years to hire a lot of really smart people to turn those widgets. And just so happens this coming Friday, the messaging and directory service team, that tier 3 entity that exists in my office, is down to 2 people come this Friday. So we have 2 people that support 544 domain controllers and the email system and provisioning. So more of a reason, I mean, that's insane, more of a reason that we need to get out of the business and let somebody else, smart people like Microsoft, do this stuff for us. So. And the outsourced lifecycle management, when the patches have to happen, when the thing has to get updated, again, let someone else do it, let us know when that's done. We chose Microsoft. I will say, personally, it's the last item to me is that they're a partner. They've been there with us for a long time. They were here in June of 2008 telling us about this option. They've been there with us through it and after. So that's the biggest reason probably for me. It does run on Exchange, which we're very familiar with. It's remote PowerShell, the option that we have, which unlike VPOS, which is Exchange 2007, under the hood it's Exchange 2010, so we're allowed to, or able to use remote PowerShell to manage everything. It is org-owned. See if there's anything else that jumps out. 24/7 support is big. I mean, we're an 8x5 shop, and then we go home. So districts that want to stay, to 2 in the morning and work on something, they'll have somebody to call and talk to, and it won't be us. Of course, the 10 gig mailboxes. Obviously, FOPI support is huge for us. And the $6.5 million of cost avoidance, as my boss would often talk about. That takes into consideration we do have a cluster. We do have some DirSync type things, obviously, in between AD and the cloud. That's a couple $100,000 worth of stuff, and that takes that into consideration. So, and the thing you're not going to see quantitatively on a dollar figure like that is those 2 guys or those 4 guys and gals that have to actually work on those boxes, and now they can focus on something else. So. We chose Full Armor because, number one, they were a Microsoft partner and recommended. We got, it was very unfair to Full Armor as we brought them in late in the process. As our districts, we kind of went for a year and a half communicating to our districts that we're not going to migrate content. We're not going to allow you to migrate content. If you want to do that, it's going to be a PST-based thing. You can do it, but your users have to use Outlook. Number one, they have to pull it out to PST. We're going to create your stuff, and if you want to push it afterwards, that's up to you, user by user. And they were like, oh, yeah, okay, sounds fine. Okay, if as long as it's free, yeah, it's okay. And then it got right down to pilots, and they were like, whoa, what are you, well, we got a problem. So Full Armor came with their capes waving and definitely worked. I think the one weekend Danny and I were talking, the developers that work for Danny, it was a 24/7 thing there for a couple days to get it done, and they did it. So it was a great product. It definitely saved the day for a lot of our districts, and they'll never know, I guess, after the fact how much work it took to pull that off there at the last. So, and I didn't point this out, but it did allow us, and as you're looking to go to the cloud, depending on your own situations, you may be different size and complexities than we do, but the project did not have to worry about the migration of the content. Meaning the way we designed it and the way we implemented it, we did it, we turned the key, it was done, we gave high fives, and after the fact, the districts could do it as they wanted. Some of them didn't migrate content, some did with the Full Armor tool, but they could do it after the fact, which was a big key for us. It wasn't a formal part of the project. Kind of breeze over the planning part. I think it is very important. If you get nothing out of, if I'm trying to think of a lesson learned from planning, it's put a good team together. You can't. I mean, we're big. When I look at AD and think of 180 domains and over 500 domain controllers, it's not complex. Our AD is not complex at all. It's just big. Our email system before Exchange 2003 was very complex. It was very big, but we won't go into it. But we had 1,800 global address lists and address lists. I mean, it's extremely complex. Keep it simple. It's what we're going to continue to do or try to do. But I'd have a very good team of people, experts that do this stuff. As you see, we have through the year and a half, I've kind of got on that one slide there. We'll go into a little bit more detail where it's pertinent here in a bit. But started in October, put the team together. We brought the partners to the table. At that time, it was Microsoft and Dell for our hardware needs. Nearly a year and a half later, we started pilot. So you can imagine a lot of stuff happened there between October and March, which we'll show on the next slides there. But Full Armor came to the table for the content migration. We are big on documenting. Again, we're dealing with K-12 entities and tech staff out in the districts that do user management, but we kind of have to make what we'd say is easy buttons. You got to make those easy buttons where I push one button and it does stuff. We can't expect 180 people to go doing a lot of work figuring things out. So we gave them a deployment guide, 30, 40-page deployment guide that said on this date you got to do this, and 2 weeks prior you got to do that. And then a district operations guide, which I wrote. I remember opening Word and starting with a blank screen, and 137 pages later there's an operations guide. And then March 21st, we did Big Bang. It was over 800,000 live IDs. Just quick project timeline. The things in red are the email side. The things in black are the AD side. Again, we insanely did both of these at the same time. So we went from 360 domain controllers to 544 along the same time that we were doing all this planning and building this system. So kind of stupid looking back, but we did it. Some more basic parts of the migration process. We did have a very formal project. And the work that I do, I'm a technical lead assigned to those projects, but we have a PM, we have program managers, we have someone that does a business analyst role, advisory committees. We really are very formal in the process. Statement of works and requirements. Major milestones, we built tenants. We have 180-ish tenants, one per student domain, and then we have one entirely that all the staff exist in. We very much use RBAC roles. If anybody's familiar with role-based access controls, in our scenario, that's how we accomplished allowing the different district staff to just manage their people and not other people's users. We did warm the cloud, and what I mean by that is beforehand we actually created those live IDs and then switched them over to mailboxes the day of. A lot of communication, and then we did Big Bang. And then the districts after we did what we call Big Bang, Full Armor came and assisted with the migration of the content. Is this you?
Yeah.
I think this is you.
Yep. So it was quite interesting. We had a product already in development that was designed to do cloud-based migration. But KDE's situation requires something more localized, and I'll show you in the next couple slides later on the migration process itself. And the neat thing with their environment was that we needed the tool to be, as John said, very simple to use. It's the high school basketball coach and some IT admins who will be using the tool. So we had to create a very simple command line tool that allowed them to just run it and literally be self-maintained, almost automated throughout. And so that was really the challenge. And they brought us, as you saw the timelines, you as an ISV, I don't know if how many of you are ISVs or partners? Okay, a couple of you. Okay, maybe you can empathize here. To be brought on 2 months before a 700,000 mailbox migration to ask you to develop a production-grade tool is quite nerve-wracking. And so we were sweating bullets, but it was fun because the reason why in the previous slide it said Microsoft chose us, it was more like, they went to the playground to see who was available, and we're the only kid playing. And so they said, okay, why don't you come and help? And so we just happened to be playing in that early adopter stage, which actually is a huge advantage. I think this is one of the biggest points as a partner that people miss, is that when you're there as an early adopter, a lot of times you're asked to do things that you can never have that opportunity again. So that was kind of what the situation with the tool was and being able to utilize it.
Just a high-level look at some of the major steps that happened prior, the weeks leading up to, and then the day of. The one things I want to note on here that you may not think about, one is the user reset AD. The users had to reset their AD passwords. When you create in a cloud-based solution like Exchange Online, when you create that live ID, you have to then reset your password to log in if you're going to do anything like PCNS or Federation or what have you. So in our case, we did not do ADFS. We did PCNS, Password Change Notification Service. We installed on every one of those domain controllers. So all of our domain controllers have that loaded on them. When a user changes their password in AD, it shoots it up to an ILM server at Frankfurt, and then it immediately resets the live ID. So in our case, we have SSO for OA, but we don't have single sign-on for Outlook. We choose same sign-on, if you will, same password. If they go to Outlook.com, again, they got to supply their credentials, but it's the same password. But we do have a single sign-on portal that we've put in place. So anyway, we did the prior steps, clean up AD, go in and delete old objects that you're not using anymore. We did Prior to, we created the new and captured existing Easy IDs. Easy ID being email as sign-in, right? That's kind of just a generic term. But what I mean by that is if you have users that currently have a Hotmail account, if you will, that they've created that has the same SMTP address that you're going to move to. Like in my case, I had already had a john.logan@education.ky.gov live ID, right? So moving into this, KDE took ownership, or it's an Oregon, they took ownership to that namespace. So even though I already had john.logan@education.ky.gov for 2 years, KDE stepped in and said, that's mine. So we had about 4,000 to 5,000 already existing of these Easy IDs, live IDs, that conflicted with the namespaces we were moving to. So we had to capture those or allow the person to, we evicted those and let them rename them. And that's key because we don't own that data that's in there. It became more of a legal issue where, you know, if I have john.logan@education, yeah, that KDE may own that namespace, but all that data I've put in it for 2 years, they don't own it. So I had the option as an end user, those 4,000 or 5,000 people got an email that said, hey, on this date, if you don't evict and rename your live ID, you know, we're going to capture that. So that was a big key to think about as you all are moving into it. Also redirect SMTP relaying. One thing that honestly, with all of the complexities and things we had on the table, one thing that kind of slipped through my cracks, it was my job to do and I didn't catch it till quite at the end, was that we have 200 Exchange 2003 servers in every district that are existing as the SMTP relay for a lot of applications, printers and who knows what, right? Every district has them. And you know, we were months probably, it wasn't like the 11th hour, but it was months before. We're kind of going through checklists, and it's like when we pull that Exchange server out of that district, what are they going to do for relaying needs? So we basically built 2 Windows 2008 servers in a VM. I think they have 2 gig apiece, and every app in the state relays to those 2 boxes. So it's, I mean, it's a piece of cake what we did to fix it, but just something you need to be aware of. So, and 2 days before we turned off the provisioning, we have a kind of an ad hoc provisioning that we had on Exchange 2003. If you're familiar with the RUS in Exchange, we kind of disable the RUS and we kind of take control of the creation because we have those students and staff and we do some specialized things there. These are the day of, kind of just a breakdown of the things that happened the day of. We converted the live IDs to mailboxes. A few days before, we had live IDs in the cloud, mainly for pilots. I'll show that here on another slide of why those needed to be there beforehand. The day of, we turned them into mailboxes. We took all the external email that was sent in and basically changed the MX record, right? So if Microsoft sends to me, it now goes to the cloud and not internal to my Exchange 2003 mailbox. Added an auto-discovery entry in DNS. So in DNS, in every one of our domains, we added an entry for auto-discover so that the Outlook 2007 and Outlook 2003 clients can resolve that and they'll create a new profile. Exchange 2003, it doesn't work. Outlook 2003, I'm sorry, doesn't work. Just 2007, 2010. So as soon as we added that in DNS, any person that actually went to create a profile, it would connect them to the cloud. And then we enabled that SSO portal, and then we loosely recreate Outlook profiles. Now, again, we've probably got tens of thousands of Outlook clients out there, and we had some specialized scripts that assisted. It's kind of that easy button concept that I was talking about that we gave out to the districts. They put it in login scripts and through group policies so that the end users at a certain moment that day, 5 p.m. or whatever, when they clicked on Outlook the next time, it kind of did some stuff and wham, 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 and then it reattached PSTs if they happened to have them with their old profile, and that's basically how that happened. At that point, the service was online. Everyone, over the next couple of days, as you could imagine, were starting to connect, and then the districts had the ability to do content migration, if you will, but move their Exchange content. I say Exchange backups here, meaning they could run EXMerge local Exchange 2003 and pull it out and then they could use full Armor's tool to push it if they wanted. Some districts chose to do nothing. They didn't let their users migrate. So, and that was fine. Last thing we did was convert the on-premise mailboxes to mail-enabled users in AD, and then we do decommission exchange. The reason they're mail-enabled users still in AD is because we have other state agencies that we deal with. They're partners of ours, transportation, all of the normal state agencies. And we have a tool, GalSync, that pulls from our AD and creates contacts in their forests. So the easiest thing to do was mail-enable all of our AD objects to let that process still work. We okay on time? Okay.
Speed up a little bit, maybe.
I'm sorry?
You can speed it up a little bit, it's fine.
Okay. On this slide, I hope this doesn't confuse. I hope it makes it a little bit more clear, but pretend there's 174 boxes in the bottom. Of course, space-wise, there'll be 3. There's a lot of stuff happening in those 3 little dots in between those. But in this case, in the bottom, we've got Exchange 2003 on-prem. This is a year ago, the day before, we'll just say. So we've got Bob, Tom, and Chick. Anybody watch Bob and Tom? And we've got, in this case, District 1, some other district, and then District 174. So today, at this moment, they can all see each other in the GAL. They're all in one forest. They can send each other email. We did the pilot migration. In this example, we're going to migrate District 1 as a pilot. In reality, we had 4 districts that we piloted a month before we rolled. In this case, we'll just say that District 1 is the one we're going to migrate to the cloud. So the first thing we had to do was create those live IDs, roughly 700,000. Students, we didn't have to. But in this case, this is a teacher, and he can see 100,000 other staff in his GAL, so we needed to create those up there so he would be able to send to them. Notice that there's the target address that's stamped, if you can see that. If I can get this thing to work. Maybe not. Oh well, there we go. Target address here, and then the X500, which is Legacy Exchange DN, meaning that so that replies work, if y'all are familiar with that. So let's just say the day before we do this, Tom, who's in the middle, let's say the day before we roll, this guy sends this guy an email. So in his inbox, he's got a message from Tom. Well, as soon as he migrates up here, if he replies to Tom, it's going to bounce unless we have done this one step right here. Right? Because it's going to look up in the GAL and it's going to see that DN and it's going to go, he doesn't exist. So that's a key, and it's in the documentation in the deployment guides, but that's a key step that you have to do. So we just piloted, we migrated Bob to the cloud. Hopefully, if you see the little envelopes in front of the guys, those are the folks that have active email. The ones that don't are just contacts, is what I've tried to do there. So now Bob's up in the cloud. He's a full-blown mailbox, and when he sends day 1 to Tom, it will, through that target address stamping, it'll send it down to Tom, who's still on Exchange 2003. So that scenario we had going for about a month, which was key for us. We really did a lot of testing and throughput info there. And likewise, when Tom sends to Bob, it will also go. And then Big Bang came the 21st, which was, as you can imagine, a pretty stressful day, but luckily all went well. And that's when we took the entire rest of the state and created those mailboxes for those live IDs. And then once we did that, we decommissioned their exchange. Actually, a few days later. We allowed the districts 2 or 3 days after the fact so they could use EXmerge and log into those local mailboxes, the admins to do it. We didn't allow users to launch Outlook and still access those mailboxes because it would have caused confusion. We just let the admins do it. These are probably, I would define these as you notice it says KDE's Live at EDU components. These are the customized type things that we did that a lot of folks would not do. I'm definitely happy to share those if we had more time, or you could email me and share exactly what those things are. OLPS is DirSync. It's our customized implementation of it because, again, what we put on the table as a business requirement is Johnny and Adair can't be seen outside of Adair. And that right there meant we needed a separate student tenant for Adair. And then Adair staff went in the staff tenant. And I'll show that here in a second. And to accomplish that, so that PowerShell under the hood, which is what part of OLPS is, so it writes, when a new student's created in this OU and AD, it writes it to the right place. We had to have a custom solution. The CATS control panel was something we chose to do, has 8 or 10 things that district CIOs can do that they would normally have to do with PowerShell. And because a lot of these people are not super technical, we chose to do some of those common tasks like open someone's mailbox or what have you. We've put it on a customized web page. PCNS we have on all our domain controllers. We do have 2 SSO boxes for OA. We talked about the SMTP relaying, and you notice at the bottom is anytime we're doing any of these implementations, I always have to think of the support side. When I did this slide, we had 4 members. Now we got 2 members as of next Friday. We also have a service desk that takes in calls of any type from our school districts. We have those CATS engineers and then the documentation. So this is a slide for those that might be interested that shows, AD with 180 domains is that one little box, and all this in the middle is the OLPS solution, Outlook Live provisioning system. So we have ILM. There's a lot of PowerShell pieces in the middle that, depending on where a district puts a staff member or how they put attributes, if they're doing it with CSVD or LDIFDE or however they would provision their users in AD, it will do something if it's a student compared to a staff. So that's just kind of a layout of how that is. And this one here probably shows it better than any. This is Fayette County. The boxes at the bottom right are the 2 domain controllers that exist in Fayette. The box on the right side, middle to top, that's in Frankfort. That's the hub site. So you see there's a DRAD, as we call it, Disaster Recovery AD, that has 200, roughly, domain controllers, 1 per district. So in this case, we've got Fayette County, they've got a domain controller and a GC local, and they also have a DC that's in that DRAD. So you notice there's a staff, and what that threw in there now were the provisioning components. You see the CATS control panel, SSO, and then the OLPS. You think of that again as DirSync. So they have a staff OU and a student OU. Every district has those. If they put someone in the staff OU, the provisioning system, AD will replicate it up within 15 minutes. Of course, it has to end up replicating to a GC. And then the OLPS system will pull that Jim just got created, and then it will push it to the proper place. In this case, it's the staff tenant. So we had already created all of the tenants, and for staff, there's 180 roughly accepted domains that are in there, namespaces, if you will. And then the provisioning system basically just creates Jim in the cloud, in the staff tenant rather, so that the other districts can see him. In this case, it's the same thing. I'll smoke through it, but they create a student. It does the same. There are 170x roughly student tenants, all of them separate tenants. And the provisioning system will see and put it in the proper place. So the districts, the nice thing for our districts is they can go to Exchange Control Panel and do things. They can use remote PowerShell if they want to do certain things to the cloud, but what we've tried to do is say the way you used to do it still works. Do it in AD, do it with LDIFDE or CSVDE or what have you, any way you normally do it, or create them one at a time in ADUC. As long as you set this attribute or that attribute, which we've outlined in the dog doc in the District Operations Guide, then the provisioning system will take care of it. So, And then the last piece is the Gauss sync that takes those mail-enabled AD objects and replicates them so the other state agencies can see it.
So this is the architecture for the actual data migration. So we actually migrated the emails, the calendar, and the contacts. It was very hard for us to estimate out of the 800,000 mailboxes what the relative sizes were going to be. You can imagine, even if 1/4 of the people decided to start migrating that weekend, you're still looking at hundreds of terabytes potentially, because some mailboxes we saw were gigabytes in size, and some were very small, but it was very hard to determine. One of the advantages of going in a direction where we would actually query AD, get the list of users, they would actually go to the Exchange server and grab all the PST files and put it in a server storage. We would then grab the PST files and then migrate them to Exchange Online. The advantage of doing that, other than the fact that they had the process already in place, is the fact that the communication to the cloud only happened once. We actually had a cloud-based product in development at the time. We did not use that because that would have required two-way communication. Pull all the data into our cloud-based service and then export it out to another cloud-based service. That actually helped a lot because we were able to, it was divide and conquer. We were able to take this on-premise tool, send it out to 174 districts, and let them go at it. The problem with that is, I mean, the advantage is clear. We were able to scale this thing out, divide and conquer. I don't think there's any one system that can migrate a single Exchange system of 800,000 mailboxes in one weekend. I don't know if that's even possible. The fact that we divided up into 174 different instances with 174 or more admins doing it simultaneously is what made this thing work. But disadvantages. One is we came upon threshold limits. For instance, we did a couple of days before the Big Bang. It was funny that they named it Big Bang because it could go either way. But anyways, it could have blown up or it could have been the start of wonderful stuff.
Actually, David Couch, who's our big boss, asked me in an email because he was getting nervous, how's it going? And I sent him an attachment that I found out on the internet that was a mushroom cloud with and it took like 2 minutes to happen,
Well, the interesting thing is we've been working together for the previous 2 months. Literally, we create a build of our product, give it to their engineers, they test it, and we'd constantly be in communication. And that really helped a lot because even 2 days before the Big Bang, we did a quote-unquote, let's do a sandbox theoretical deployment. So went to a couple of districts, did a deployment, and let's simulate the load, 1/10 or 10% of the load. We did that, and we found out there was a protection mechanism built into Exchange Online because they essentially considered us a denial of service attack. Because we had so much data being pumped into Exchange Online, it was feeding back errors. And we had no idea what was happening. 2 days before, literally my devs are sweating bullets, and we're all dying here because everything's failing. Everything worked in the labs. Everything worked in single instances. As soon as we started scaling this thing out to potentially what it would be, everything died. I remember...
You know what we're saying? We're saying this thing sucks.
Exactly. It was our fault. I was, after the fact, told that several of the VPs in the Exchange team got calls at 2 in the morning. It was just, 12 o'clock fire alarm here. What apparently happened, we found out, was there's a certain theoretical threshold limits. Once it's reached, which no one really reached at that point, except us, Exchange Online gives back an error, and embedded in the error in the XML is a description, an error code, which was at the time undocumented, that said the server is busy and it gives you a wait time to wait before you retry. And if you don't wait, that wait time that was given you before you retry, it will then disconnect you. So we were getting error messages, disconnections, and so on. So there was a lot of stuff we had to work through. And again, we'll come to the later slide on the recommendations. But when you're going to do migration of any size, it is extremely important to engage with the migration team or the product early on, because I don't think there's any such thing as a standard migration. There's so many situations we had come across as a result of doing this type of migration. There's got to be a lot of other scenarios that you would have to work through as a result. But again, that helped a lot, being able to divide and conquer. And I believe, and we all held our breath in the weekend, but it all went.
It did.
It all went well.
Yep. I think do you have another one?
No.
Okay, the management today, it's happened a year ago. We went through all the stress, and then it's over. So now what? And for our staff, for those CIOs that are out there, they can still manage their users and DGs as they did before. They can use the normal ways of doing it, including PowerShell. They can use that CATS control panel that we special built for them. They can go to Exchange Control Panel as well. They can go in and set certain settings differently for students than they can for staff. Again, we created student tenants, so in that student tenant, they can do a lot more than they can in the staff tenant, because there's some things like transport rules or RBAC roles that is more of a tenant admin to do, and we didn't want to delegate that out. So our CIOs or their techs can do certain things for their students, closed campuses, closed campus transport rules and things like that, but they cannot do it in the staff tenant. They open a service desk ticket if they want something like that done, and we do it for them. And also, they have the ability to change the tombstoning settings if you're familiar with what tombstoning is, because to me, it's a pretty critical part of this system, whether you're K-12 or not. And we can talk about that at the end, make sure we have time. I call it spoon feeding, and that sounds like that's bad. I always say that we need to get out of the business of spoon feeding the districts, because it creates a lot more work on us. We have to duplicate all the documentation. Microsoft already has that stuff on their web. Why are we special doing it and making it perfect for education? But we continue to do it, and it's a good thing we do it. We have the dog doc up at the top right, single sign-on. At the left, you notice it highlighted in yellow. It says training videos. That's the CATS control panel. Again, we could look at that. There's different things that we special customize for them to do. Provisioning doesn't work. They can go look at that viewer option and go check and see exactly what's happened with that object, things like that. And I did all those training videos I used Camtasia and just kind of from the hip created a lot of videos for them. There's probably 8 or 10 PowerShell ones, remote PowerShell, that shows them basic things they can do. I don't mind at all sharing any of that stuff with you all if you want. You can get a business card from me after the fact or send me an email. And also in the middle is our CATS Service Desk page, which anyone could get to. You don't have to have credentials to do that. You could go out and Bing or Google CATS Service Desk, and if you drill down, you'll see over on the left Directory Services and Outlook Live email, and in there's lots of docs and lots of end-user facing videos that some of our people have gone out and collected from the different sites and everything, kind of put here as a one-stop shop for our folks, and may be helpful for you all as well. And then on the right, we actually extended the schema and changed the MSC for ADUC for all of our users, and you notice, if you can see it, the one it's sitting on the tab is the CATS EDU tab, and it actually has a place there that they can go in and set. This is a staff member, this is a student. What plan did they get? The reason that's there's only one plan, and it's email or not at this point. But we knew Office 365 was coming, so that tab could soon say SharePoint Online, Link Online, all the above, just these two or whatever. So we kind of built that into it knowing it was coming. So challenges that we have. Now, this is something that I'll say is a challenge for us as an educational entity or just technology, and as well as the time goes on, like Web 2.0. To me, the Web 2.0 tools are great, but they're so challenging for architects and engineers or any IT pros, because the end users real quickly get a lot smarter than we do. Where 5-10 years ago, when someone wanted a web page, they had to ask, right? They wanted a new mailbox, they had to ask. They always had to ask us, so we always, I'll say, knew more than they do. And Now we're enablers. We give them these tools and we go, here's Office 365 and there's 85,000 things you can do in there. And then in a month, when you've got, people, especially students that figure this stuff out quicker than teachers, in no time we get bombarded with, wait, what, now that thing you all gave us a month ago, how does it do this? And I'm like, I didn't even know you could do that. So it's really a challenge to try to stay up on top of all the technologies. The technology is always updating. It's a great thing. We're going, we just a year ago went to Live at EDU, and now it's soon to be Office 365, but it's still a challenge. It's something that we have to stay up on top of. The days of putting in Exchange 5.5 and letting it sit for 7 years, those days are gone. It's a great thing because but it keeps us on our toes. We have age 13 issues, again, being K-12. Multi-tenant design is something that we chose to do. It was a business requirement that we chose to put on the table. We're going to try to simplify that moving forward. PowerShell, again, we're K-12, so the PowerShell and RBACs for our districts are an issue. For us, it's not as much. And what we've noticed is in those different individual student tenants, our CIOs really haven't done a whole lot of transport rules, and I think it's just for the complexity. But again, that's something we need to work toward. Moving forward, as we go into the next projects, I'm going to look to try to simplify a lot of this stuff, take a lot of those business rules off the table, and try to make this as easy as it can be. We have a Snowbound initiative that says when a kid in rural Kentucky is sitting at home because he can't get to school because of snow, because we've had districts have 20 days off from school, that our commissioner has tasked our office with trying to figure out how Live at EDU and these other tools can help us there. So I'm going to look to try to put everything in the cloud after this was over. I mean, when they came to me in June and said there's this thing in the cloud, email or whatever, I had 1,000 pages of architecture and deployment docs I had just printed out with Exchange 2007 because I was going to build 200 Exchange 2007 boxes. So I was pretty resistant. And now I'm exactly the opposite. I'm looking at Microsoft saying, we drank the Kool-Aid, y'all can have it all, as long as there's support mechanisms in place for it, and that's the key. It's not just put AD up in a VM, it's patch it, support it, and that's move. And again, I have here moving forward, that's where I hope to see things get in the next coming years. And P20. Kids leave a school, go to another school, kids graduate, go to a state university. We want to see that Live ID move with them. We want to see that content go with them. And right now, there's challenges to that. So, takeaways. If I'm trying to give any lessons learned here, I would say, definitely look at the total cost of all that you're doing. You cannot communicate enough with your users. In our case, it's schools, but I don't think it really matters. Every time we do any of these projects, I think we could communicate every day, and they'd say we're not communicating enough. Always, of course, the support side. Do you want to stay, maybe in your company you all want to stay in the widget turning business, but in our case we don't. I mean, we lost half of the members of our MADS team, and do we want to spend time looking at replacing those people with adequate folks, or do we want to let somebody else do it? So. I would again suggest procuring, in our case, MCS, Microsoft, and Full Armor, and Dell as well, who we went with our hardware. We're getting a lot wiser. Again, this is 21 years I've been doing this, and I'm really more on letting the experts help me do a lot. They make me look good to my bosses, and that's really what I'm more after nowadays. So.
Yeah, just a couple of, just recap, measure twice, cut once. I mean, we just spend a considerable amount of time with KDS in making sure that the migration planning went well. So engage with your migration partner early on. Obviously, you're going to hit milestones or blockages that's going to require a lot of flexibility. The other thing is look for partners that are early adopters. Office 365, which is probably the area that you're looking to migrate to, there's only a handful of customers or partners that probably did an early adopter type environment. Don't engage a partner that's going to have to learn with you along the way. That's probably why Microsoft is probably the better option, because they know that environment so well. So they have migration options as well. Or other partners that are very close to Microsoft. You want to make those considerations.
So, really quick, we talked about KDE's unique situation, and also we talked about Full Armor. We also now provide a lot more migration options native to Office 365 and Exchange Online. These are a few of them. Here are a few of the scenarios. We have IMAP migration, and this is generally for migrating from non-Exchange platforms or older Exchange platforms. So if you're coming from a different server environment, maybe something that your institution or your organization made yourself, Lotus Notes Domino, Gmail, IMAP migration. We have cutover Exchange migration is what we really recommend for very small businesses. This is all up in the cloud, all at once. And we have our simple Exchange migration, or what we call SEM. Rom did a fantastic presentation about that called Simple Migration Live. And hybrid deployment. So this is really what we call our hybrid or rich coexistence is what it's been referred to. So if you plan on having part of your environment on-prem for an educational institution, perhaps staff and faculty on-prem, students in the cloud. If you're a business, perhaps your main office is on-prem, subsidiaries in the cloud, or you have a very large organization and you expect your migration to be very lengthy, over a year, over a couple years, and you want to make sure there's good coexistence between your on-premises mailbox users and your cloud users. Hybrid deployment is really the way to go. And Jim Lucy, who is my teammate, did a presentation on this yesterday. But I will have the codes later for you. So in case you weren't able to catch those, you can watch recordings, because what's great about TechEd, they're all recorded. So what they actually used to migrate to the cloud was a Full Armor tool. But Full Armor actually now provided the tool to Quest. So if you're interested in exactly the same tool that KDE used, it's now called the Quest Migrator for Cloud Email. So it's part of their tool set. You can purchase it, and it's now supported by Quest. So related content, like I had mentioned, EXL 310 and 311 were hybrid deployment and simple migration options. Other ones that I kind of highlighted were best practices to transition to the cloud and directory synchronization, which was on the Office 365 track. Interactive sessions, something that comes up quite often when people are considering the cloud, archiving and compliance. That comes up all the time, and that's why, even though it didn't seem like it was related, I wanted to make sure that you know that you can have archiving solutions, whether you're on-prem or in the cloud. Resources, please, if you don't read the Exchange team blog, I encourage you to do so. We have fantastic writers and team members who contribute content all of the time. Half the questions that I got when standing at the Exchange demo station or booths were questions. I said, hey, did you check out this week's blog post? We talked about virtualization in a blog post today. Did you check out Robert's rules for Exchange? Robert had blogged about that a month ago. And there's such great content. And if you use Windows Phone, there's a Windows Phone app for it. I know I'm the person who says there's an app for that. So please check out our blogs, amazing resources. And before I get to questions, I can't thank John and Danny enough for coming to TechEd to tell you what their experience has been. So this is something that's new, right? We usually don't allow our customers to present an entire session about their experience. And I want you guys to give them a big round of applause for being here and telling us what happened. And before we get to questions, please fill out evaluations. This is the first time we've ever done a case study type of session. And we want to know what you think, how we can make this better, and also what went well. So we really appreciate your feedback. We actually read your feedback. This isn't going into some giant bucket somewhere. So with that, if you would step up to the microphones to ask questions, we'll all be happy to take them.
And I've got if anybody wants to talk more, I mean, I definitely, and we've spent a lot of time over the last year, set up a couple-hour con call, have no problem at all doing that if y'all want to do that. So.
Yeah, we know other people who use their deployment operations guides, resources, PowerShell videos, businesses and educational institutions alike. So if you guys have questions, you can go up to the mic and so we can record it for other folks. So go ahead, questions.
One question was about public folders. Did you guys have any shared data that you had to migrate to the cloud? And if so, how did you deal with that? And the second question was, did you have any special email, mailbox type situations that didn't work in the cloud that you had? I noticed you had no Exchange servers left at all on premise. So how did you deal with any special situations?
The Exchange part, then, we cleanly got rid of all the Exchange servers, mainly because we're very standardized. And like I say, we're very unique in that. We own those boxes. I say we loosely, but in Frankfurt, the engineering groups and the support side. So we know how they're set up. We know how our users are using the data. We had told our districts that Outlook 2007 and Outlook 2010 were the only supported MAPI clients. And we really didn't give options of IMAP or POP or anything else. We said it's going to be these two or it's going to be OA. So because of that, it went pretty cleanly. A lot of districts, and it was up to the district on whether they wanted to migrate content or not. We had very little issues, to be honest with you. I remember for the couple weeks after Big Bang, as you can imagine, we're kind of at the control center night and day working on issues. And when you've got 700,000 people you just took, you're going to have a couple that didn't work. And I think we had like a dozen. I mean, now those took a while to fix, to resolve, but it was very minimal, the issues we had. And on content migration, I think it was minimal as well. We allowed our districts to take time if they wanted. I think what happened is a lot of districts ran EXmerge beforehand. They had that PST copy. I think they were nervous wrecks thinking that their end users, their principals, superintendents, whatever, were going to freak out when they log in on Monday and they have nothing in there. And I think what they found is they didn't freak out. They realized that they have those PSTs archived somewhere. If you want to go attach to them, that's fine. Let me know when you want me to push that stuff, and a lot of them didn't. So many of them used the full Armor tool, and by the time that we rolled Big Bang after the pilots, we spent a lot of time after pilots tweaking, but by the time we ran, I think it ran well, and it gave them options. Do you want to do calendar? Do you want to just do email? Some of the districts said we don't care about the content. We got to have our calendar. We got to have our contacts.
Did you have public folders too?
We have districts that have public folders. We had public folders. Obviously, there's no public folder options, so we just didn't migrate public folders. And the districts found different ways to pull that content off. And really what we did was we polled the districts and said, how are you using them? There's 3 or 4 ways you can use public folders. How are you using public folders? And all of them were using them as file servers or calendar. They would have a calendar folder, so we said, hey, there's another way to do this, and here's the way it is. Okay, what about other ways you're using it? All of it. I think there were 30-some districts that used public folders. KDE was by far the biggest users of public folder, but when we stepped back and looked at it, it was a file server.
Also, the data also mapped. We had to have a map translation from the PST data to Exchange Online. And obviously, the basic stuff was easy, the mail and whatnot, but then the attachments in Calendar or links or extra tabs in the contacts, those are things we had to map in. But they all had a place, but had to be mapped. And so actually, it's interesting. We did a comparison test. Google was, at the time, expounding on their migration solution or migrating on-premise Exchange to their Gmail system. And it was lightning fast. And we were just confused, how could they do this so fast? And what we found out later on is all they were doing a bulk copy. They weren't doing any translation. So they weren't doing any logging or any diagnostics. And so if your migration had stopped in the midterm and it actually failed, you try to migrate again and duplicate every mail that you had. So there was a lot of stuff they kind of shortcutted. And so again, it's very important that the vendor that you choose, like Microsoft and whatnot, that it is done correctly, that is done in a scaled fashion.
Did that get both of them? Okay.
Other questions?
Yes.
Sorry, there's a bright light right behind you. Almost didn't see you there.
John, I'm curious. I noticed you had a custom DirSync solution, and I'm wondering why you didn't choose ADFS.
Why we didn't do ADFS?
Yeah. And as well, what was your federation?
The main reason to not, in our case, was to not do ADFS, and I really didn't mention this, with our mobile devices or with laptops, really, when in certain parts of Kentucky, the network is not what I'd say completely stable. I mean, we've had people shoot with shotguns, shoot fiber off a pole. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding you. So when that happens, in the district office, the people that are in that district office can get to the Exchange server and those resources, but nobody in any of the other schools can get there. Now, because if you did ADFS, or if we had done ADFS, we would rely on AD to log in. So if we had done ADFS and done integration or federation, if that happened, lost the connection, and then we go down to McDonald's and try to log in, we can't, because it's got to get back to our AD to authenticate us. So what we really wanted, we were okay if we didn't have single sign-on, as long as we have same sign-on, but we did not want to rely at all on our network. So we wanted to allow districts, if a flood came and destroyed the district office, they can still go somewhere and log into their mail at least. So that's really why we did it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions?
Did you have to add a lot of bandwidth when you knew you were going to, Office 365?
What we did was we did a lot of testing on polling the districts. What kind of clients do you have? Is your district all OA? We have some that are all OA. All of the students use OA for the most part. Some staff do use OA. A lot used Outlook 2007, 2010, and we really spent quite a bit of time doing sniffs on the line. What's going to be the overhead if you're in cache mode? You can imagine it sends it up and brings it back down. How's that going to affect? Because the day before we migrate, when that principal sends a 10 meg email to all of his teachers, it never leaves the district the day before we migrated. Now it's leaving the wire and going in 500 mailboxes, and then they're going to pull it all back down in cache mode, right? So we were really worried about that. So we did a lot of testing. We did move some of our connections around. All of our districts had pretty good bandwidth for the most part, but what we did was there were some districts that had 40 meg and they didn't really need it. So we dropped it down to 10, which enabled us to lift more. We moved it around, but we really didn't spend any more money flexing it. But really, the biggest concern I had, I think, going into this, and you never know till you flip the switch, was the network. I wasn't concerned as much about the back end side, the San Antonio data center holding I wasn't worried about the Microsoft pieces or the full armor pieces. It was the network. I was really worried about it, but
Yeah, if you've got shotguns shooting down your fiber.
It
We're
really
actually over time right now, and I want to be conscious of time, especially since some people have flights to catch or drinks to be had. But we will stay here and answer questions, and also feel free to email us. We'll pass out cards.
Yep.
Thank you
Anybody
so
wants
much
cards,
for
let's-
attending. Thank you.